To make about 9 scones, you'll need 225 grams, 8 ounces of self-raising flour, plus a little extra for dusting, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 50 grams, 2 ounces of butter cubed, 50 grams, 2 ounces of sugar. You can use granulated or caster sugar. Approximately 120 ml, that's 4 fluid ounces of milk. And if you want a high glaze on the finished scones, some beaten egg. Before you start, you need to preheat your oven to 220 centigrade, 425 Fahrenheit, that's gas mark 7, and line a small baking tray with some non-stick baking paper or parchment paper. Next, place your flour in a bowl together with the salt and just give it a good stir. And then add the butter. The reason for cubing the butter is just so that it rubs into the flour a little more easily. And using your fingertips, just rub the butter into the flour. If you're used to pastry making, you'll find this very easy because there isn't actually a lot of butter in this mixture, so it will do very quickly. It's a good idea to lift the mixture out of the bowl as high as you can get it to incorporate some air whilst you're rubbing the butter into the flour. It does very quickly, and you're finished when there aren't any large pieces of butter left in the mixture. It'll take about 2 or 3 minutes. Now at this point, if you were going to make savoury scones, you could add your savoury ingredients such as grated cheese or herbs or spices. But we're going to make sweet scones, so I'm going to add the sugar and just stir it in with a knife. Now once again, just as an aside, if you were going to make fruit scones, now would be the time to add your fruit. Things like sultanas, cherries, or dates. But as I said earlier, we're making plain sweet scones. So now I'm going to add the milk. Now it's best to just add half of the milk initially, because different brands of flour take up liquid at different rates. Use a knife and just stir that in. And it will start coming together. And at this point you add the milk a little more at a time, because you don't want the mixture to be too wet. Using a knife brings it all together quite well, so that is recommended. Don't use a spoon or a wooden spoon or anything. I'm just going to feel this mixture a bit. It's still relatively dry, so I'm going to throw caution to the wind and add the rest of my milk. If you find that you've added too much milk, don't worry about it. Just add a little more flour and continue to very lightly pull it together. Don't knead the mixture because you don't want to get rid of the air that you've managed to incorporate. So once you've got a soft but not wet dough, turn the mixture onto a floured work surface. Well, flour it. And then just form it into a flat round. There's no need to use a rolling pin. Once you've got your flat circle that's about 2.5 centimetres, 1 inch deep, you can cut them into circles. It's easier to do this using a normal biscuit cutter. Well flour it, and then just start cutting your circles. Now, a little tip: when you've cut a circle, push the cutter straight down and then pull it straight up. Don't twist it, because otherwise the sides tend to get all stuck together and then they won't rise evenly. So once you've done that, just place it onto your baking tray and cut the remaining circles out in the same way. Straight down, don't twist. Of course, if you haven't got a cutter, you could actually have just cut this into wedges. There's no hard and fast rules. It's just that circles are the traditional shape of scones. Make sure you flour your cutter between each cut. Once you've got to the point where you can't get any more complete scones out, just bring the mixture together gently, reform it, and then continue cutting. So place them well spaced apart on your baking sheet, and you can either glaze them with a little milk, or if you want a higher glaze, with some beaten egg. Don't make them too wet, just enough to give them a sheen. Then once you've done that, you need to pop them in the oven and bake them for about 10 minutes until they're risen, golden brown and firm to the touch. After 10 to 12 minutes, when they're well risen and golden brown, remove from the oven and transfer to a wire rack to cool. Fresh homemade scones. Excellent served with butter, but for a really special tea time treat, served with jam and thick clotted cream.